I'm Stella. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Stella.
I know many of you. So I thought, apparently I just brought all these things. Like, how do you talk in 20 minutes? But I thought I would just start with some prints that relate to the work on the wall. It's a new series that I've been working on. I was pulling from Japanese bird and flower prints and just like putting them taking them into contemporary American life, which has been, I've drawn from for the last 10 years, but sort of focusing on scenes or moments that might be overlooked or understated, or you see the wrong part of, or like challenging what the viewer would see. And it's kind of fun. It was funny because with this series, I was just a lot of times coming up with scenarios, just thinking about how we are interacting with animals in the world that I see around, with my own experiences, and then just based on observation. And they were all made with the Japanese woodblock method. So I have a few of the first ones that I started. So this was like a fishing net scene. And then this, it's like a man's torso with his hair and tattoo. But then also within all of these, and this one is called the search party. Kind of, sorry, it falls off the table a little bit. Where there's a search party searching for a lost child. And with all these images, I was also thinking about like abstraction and where I could abstract and sort of delete part of the scene so it becomes like a slower reveal for the viewer. Where it might take you a while to figure out exactly what's happening in the image. What's always, for me, with print, has always really interested me is first like challenging what I can do with the materials, like with woodblock, or even in silkscreen, like how I can make it more painterly, or like more like a brushstroke, like thinking about the line and exactly like how that gets translated, where it could be like really soft or really hard. So it's just sort of like how would you say that? I don't know, pushing up against the materials. And then another thing with print that is always, and I think which works with what I'm thinking about in my work, is that idea of time that happens when you make a print. Where you draw a line and then the line is drawn, like it's traced to your matrix, whatever. It's like your films or your block of wood, and then you carve that. And then eventually that gets printed, or it gets printed and it has to mix with two other colors to make you want it. So like that whole space in between, and how that affects like that distillation process, and how that affects the imagery, like what's removed, what's added, what's lost you have control over, and then like, and when it's transferred to the paper, that sort of immediate mark has slowly been so cultivated. And so I think like thinking about that for the viewer, and so that the images get more slowed down in a way. So here's another, this was actually, it's kind of funny because I made this quite a long time. I'd started working on this series and then I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so that was the first one, and then there was like a break, and then I made this one, and then I had studied Japanese printing in college, and then I had the opportunity to go for a summer and do a whole 6-week program. And then from then, so I've been working, so I have quite a few. So, I was thinking a lot about where the image falls apart or comes together with scale, where, what I love about prints is like when you can have just a moment that's really quiet or really busy. This was like the pole beans in my backyard that these insects just had their day with. And so, also think not necessarily showing and the same, with like this one playing with the abstraction on the floor and the cropping. And then, thinking about how soft I could get it and also be graphic and very carved. And then I brought to show you, because I think it's kind of interesting, my process. Maybe it's not interesting, but. So, I start out with a drawing, like a watercolor. I'll have many to test colors. And then when I started these prints, actually, and I was like, just you're carving and carving and carving, and it's like, it's insane. And then printing it takes so long. I started making watercolor monoprint studies, and actually, I have this one for you. It was really fascinating because I was cutting films and making stencils, and it really was making me think about how they layered in a different way than when you just paint on the watercolor. It was like taking that other step of, how the two colors mix when they're ran through the press. So that, so it went from there, and then finally to my print. And then this is another image in the series that I'm working on. So I was just thinking about, here's Mike Tyson with this tiger. And then I've been thinking a lot about, where I could abstract and where it could come together. So that's those ones. I had lots of older. Should I keep going? Yes. Okay. Then I have this series I have been working on, looking at, and these are silk screens. And again, I was thinking about, how I could push how the medium works, like with how line gets transferred when you draw and it goes through the film. So this one, it's like a case from the print fair. It's looking at Japanese prints, but it's all, they have the shunga that they have to hide away from. And so this one, I was just, a lot of these prints, I was thinking about imagery and how it's conveyed, what the different mediated ways we see images. This one was a talk show. And so, playing, and I'm thinking a lot about how, where you could get lost in the decorative, and then it slowly comes out what is happening. Again, playing with how things are cropped for the viewer. I have another one over there. Okay, there. Sorry. These two. So this one was from Fifth Avenue, and I like to pull from when I working on a series ideas, I try to be pulling from lots of different sources, or not sources, but sort of scenes or places or ideas. So it's not, inside, outside. So this one again, the snow leopard. There was a video of a snow leopard, and the idea of the time passing, and it's condensed into the screen. And it's kind of ridiculous because those windows are enormous and not this tiny. But then how this was built up was those blacks weren't print just once. It was like this whole leopard was printed one time, and then that leopard went on top and then left. So that it just was like the information going on top of each other.
Are they block printed or?
These are screen prints. These last ones. So, and and really working with the transparency and building it up, where it could breathe or be more dense, like the idea of light.
Is there a reason that white prints are big?
I like to work big.
Yeah.
I like.
That you get.
I like the room that it gets you, and you know, I mean, you are limited, and I actually I do work a lot on some very old ones. I like to work with diptychs, so I can even be bigger. You know, because you're limited if you just, I mean, paper does only some, you know, hard to get. So, like this one was Memorial Day Parade. And now again, thinking about the cropping and ways. I have one, pull one more thing. Or this is a little bit crazy. What? I didn't bring the jigsaw, sorry.
What is that?
Oh, well, these are old, but I have, there's this one.
What is old?
This is from David.
How old? I love the color on this one.
I think in my first years at purchase, so 2011. It's funny, purchase time. Ancient. But then, oh, here was this one too. So these were, you know, these guys pulling from. This was a fundraiser.
So those are like 2011.
Yeah. But then so the idea of time, I've done quite a few. It's so funny to see it all rolled up like this. And it's gonna be really funny for you.
This is like the very top of the bag.
Yeah.
There's more and more and more.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I know, I was like print lady. But did at the same time, you're not gonna get this full effect. I brought an extra roll of tape. I did a sequence, like this is from a food cart. But you know, again, thinking about that idea of abstraction and things falling apart and the time and, you know, the time in the making. And so what happens is it was displayed like a grid. So, you know, it goes from open and where, you know, the text gets overtaken by the dots. And then if you get really close and you can see it's all hand-drawn and really terrible.
These have such an interesting affinity with your serial boxes, right? Like,
But then where, you know, slowly the image is illuminated and then it's just lights and colors, and the darkness. And then it
Did you have to start each one really from the beginning, or?
Yeah, you know, actually, when I first conceived of it, I thought I was going to be able to just draw the background and print on it, but I couldn't. Because I needed to have the light, like I needed to have the holes for the light, so I had to draw, I think there were 40 of them. And
Was this from 2011 as well, or just more
no,
recent?
let's think, maybe 2014 or 15.
And are these editions?
Yeah, I did a few.
and there's 40 in this series.
Yeah, so it was.
It really was a Mary Poppins bag.
And then it goes to it's called Open Late, and then
Have you shown these before?
I showed a small portion at Field Projects with Joelle, and then I got to show it all big at the gallery, the Moss Gallery. But it wasn't framed at the Moss. It would be kind of nice if it was framed, but that's kind of the same.
How was it famous?
There's like a small black frame, you know, thinking about the frame that they are in on the trucks, right? They have a black frame. So then and so it was just the blue and the pink mixing. So, and it was to scale. But yeah, like, you know, I don't know, I think a lot about slowing, how to slow things down, how, you know, sort of, kind of like making a space, if that makes sense.
Were you working from video stills or from?
I did,
still?
I took a video and then I pulled out.
Yeah.
And then I started making them up too, because once you saw it, you're like, oh, that's how that works.
Interesting.
You know, so.
It's kind of a nice shade with them.
Yeah, we, there's a little bit of, mica in
Yeah. I noticed that on some of the other ones.
Yeah. Sneaky, right? So then that's the end.
That's his word for it, that's his word for
Do you have any questions? That's,
How big is the
my
edition?
bag, I'm reading my hat.
How big is the edition?
I think I have like 3. They're all, most of my editions are like small, like 5 or so. Yeah.
And are the woodblock prints, are they a small edition as well, or and are they variable, or?
They are variable, but because of a process. But yeah, usually 3 to 5 about. And because the scale, it's hard to print that method that big. I mean, I'm learning a lot even as I'm going. I'm educating myself. But yeah.
So I want to know how many wood blocks you use to get all your different colors for the one that's hanging, and what's the most wood blocks you've used to get one print?
Oh, well, I think this one was a little bit, I mean, it's not necessarily the blocks because you know in that method you can have multiple colors on one block, which kind of can be bad. And then I also learned that in Japan they did not do that because that slows you down
Yeah.
incredibly. If you were doing production, that didn't make any sense. But so this one was about 30 colors, but only 10 or 12 blocks.
That's still a lot.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
Yeah.
I make mistakes or I carve. I mean, I've personally realized that I feel like if you draw badly in woodblock, it's like 100 times worse than if you draw badly in other things for some reason. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It looks really bad,
Yeah.
and then you have to do it again, like because you drew it badly. And, yeah. So, you know, you make mistakes of like how you thought. So, you know. So, yeah. For this series, I have 2 other images already cut and I'm proofing them, and I'm working on like a sequence, a monoprint sequence of a performer taking a dove out of, like I'm doing a sleight of hand trick with a dove. So things like that. That's where, yeah, so it gives you an idea of it.
Your work reminds me to slow down, but you have so much that how can
I don't really sit still. It's kind of a problem.
You talk a lot about abstraction. Do you see yourself heading like to just full on 100% abstract?
I don't think so. I don't know.
I mean, there's a progression in
Yeah.
work too.
Yeah, I
Like
think
heads that
it's
direction.
getting,
So
yeah.
I didn't know how you thought about that and where you see that like pure abstraction influence.
I don't know. You just keep making it, right? You sort of have no idea what you're going to make. That's a scary thing.
I think that it's like I think that most printmakers are aware that there's like this like false dichotomy between like painting, printmaking, whatever. But I was curious for your specific process because I think that you do an exceptionally good job of expressing the painterly mark and the edges and the attention to all of these like details and elements and things like that through printmaking. But what's your specific relationship to that sort of schism between people identifying as painters or printmakers? Like
the little, explain yourself once.
Yeah, or do you look to other painters, or do you look to like the process to dictate the marks, or do you try and recreate a mark which is specifically painted?
I think it's a little bit of a meeting of the two. So, I think for me, the process of the printing greatly informs how I'm thinking about my images and how they're coming together and where they come apart and come back together. And as far as I looked to painters, but I always studied printmaking.
Yeah.
From when I started making prints when I was like 16. And then, yeah. But, so, yeah, there's that funny thing. That little thing. Other questions?
So when you silk screen, are you silk screening on Asian paper too?
Yeah, these are just because Japanese paper is so strong. So it's
But
just
it doesn't work.
no. It can. I mean, you print wet with wood block, so it's just kozo, Japanese kozo. And some of them you can get are so thick. Like if you compare, this is probably 900. This is like a 50 gram. But yeah, you can. I mean, I think like I wouldn't do Gampi or anything like that. But
Okay. Yeah, I'm just running into that problem myself.
warping.
Or just what's happening is that I guess if I have any borders, it warps.
Oh yeah, I have noticed that it doesn't like if you are printing it, you have to move around. You can't just think you're going to work on one area and then because the paper there's the moisture there. So maybe does that make sense? Like
Yeah, that makes
you want to keep.
Do you print a large base? Like, do you print like one tone overall, or is there much like unprinted paper?
I feel like a lot of these, I cover the holes. There's like just little bits of white coming through. Not so much in some of these ones I've been working on, but yeah, it's interesting.
And it resolves to a very matte, sort of like absorbed finish, where it's actually surprisingly hard to tell between the silk screens and the Japanese wood block. Do you have to do anything specific to achieve that, or the like water-based base?
I think it's just that I'm using it. I use a lot of base, and then I'm just using those pigments that are just those pigment dispersions.
Not
No, I'm not using ink. No,
Oh, so the acrylic.
there's no.
Compartment.
Yeah, so it's like I'm using the same inks, just yeah.
And is it the
A
speedball base?
No, yeah, I think there's speedball base, or there's another one. What's that?
Golden.
Not golden. I think that's really flat.
Anybody else name a brand?
I can't remember it, but it's a French Canadian brand. I'll remember, but so not your card. But Guerra pigments here in Guerra in the city, yeah. And there are a couple of other places where you can buy those.
Wow.
Yeah. And those are great for watercoloring or making your own oil paint.
Yeah.
So just powdered pigments.
They're not powdered,
they're
they're
not.
liquid dispersions.
Oh.
So they're safe, they're not unhealthy.
Okay.
Like the creative.
Yeah, I've never used those ones, but yeah.
We started going through the brands.
Yeah. And then you guys, I would get sponsored too. Stella Ebner supported by Craytex.
Glasgow.
Any other
Can I just ask you a question about content since we went so deep on that direction? I was curious, first struck by the content of the search party, because that was so intense. And it was just kind of, and like, they had this like gold and yellow, and this like purple, like contrast going on. And I think I heard you talk a little bit about like how you come to choose or edit these images, but I think you said something about Americana or something like that.
Yeah.
But could you talk a little bit more about content?
Usually, I usually just always, it's hard to say you're looking for scenes, and especially with the recent wood blocks, I was thinking about, like a scenario between a child and a pet, and then I'll be looking, you sort of like standard ideas of like, that might be like iconic imagery, and then, so I'll be looking, and then something, I'll see something, I'll remember something, or maybe I'll read something, and then. Hold on? Oh, yeah. No, but they make nice watercolors. And so I will sometimes take photos, or I will draw, or I'll set up a still life and recreate something. Like, the search party actually came from my childhood, like I remembered that story. Because I was thinking about scenarios, where animals are used to help humans or to save, humans. And so that just came from where I grew up in the Midwest. It was really famous. It was like when I was the same age as that, so that was like something I just was from experience. And then, let's see, I don't know, yeah. So that is that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where did you study in Japan? I'm just curious.
I did the Mila program, which was, it's right by Mount Fuji. It's in like Kawaguchiko. It was great. You know, it was,
Thank you, Stella.
oh, you're welcome.
Fabulous.
Okay.